Moral truths, moral absolutes, where have they gone? That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Listen to this May 15th, 2025 finding from Barna Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University. Americans' views of moral truth, quote, contradictory and unbiblical, end quote. This is based on a survey conducted by the Cultural Research Center, George Barna, at Arizona Christian University. A new national study shows that most Americans no longer believe in absolute moral truth and instead rely on feelings and cultural norms to make moral decisions. Well, I don't have to tell you what kind of mess that leads to, do I? Before I get into more of this, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. At Real Life Network, that is Pastor Jack Hibbs's Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills news outreach, faith-based news outreach. And I can tell you, it's excellent. It's excellent. I'm so happy that Bold and Blunt is part of RLN's lineup, Real Life Network's lineup. But it's not just Bold and Blunt there. They have excellent podcasts and news items that you're going to want to check out and subscribe to. You can also get Bold and Blunt, of course, at WashingtonTimes.com, where I would invite you to subscribe to my Bold and Blunt newsletter. It's called Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. No duh on that, right? Comes out 3 times a week. All you have to do is enter your email address at WashingtonTimes.com in the newsletter section under Cheryl Chumley Bold and Blunt, and you will get Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right to your email box, my commentaries, my Bold and Blunt podcasts, and whatever videos I feel like doing that particular week, which I was supposed to have a whole bunch of them coming for you, but my Israel trip got put on the back burner because of, war. So hopefully that will be coming soon. My trips will be rescheduled, and then I'll have some on the scene from Israel videos for you as well. But guess what? You can also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. Let me go back to this Arizona Christian University finding from May. This shift in belief, continuing reading here, right? How people rely, instead of on absolute moral truths, on their feelings, because their feelings are oh so important. They're not feeling very, very good today. So of course, if they don't feel very well, then they don't have to behave very well. You can see that kind of moral truths in the streets today in most of your Democrat-controlled communities, where all the unemployed thugs are out there protesting against this and that, and most things tied to Donald Trump and anything conservative, and the Jewish people, and rivers to the sea. Those are all based on feelings and emotions and nothing to do with truthful history or even moral truths. But those are just some examples of this. So let me go back and continue reading from this Arizona Christian University finding. This shift in belief has resulted in most Americans holding contradictory and unbiblical views about moral truth. The report from veteran researcher Dr. George Barna found that 74% of adults trust feelings over facts. What? To discern moral truth. Is it really that high? 74% of adults trust their feelings over facts to discern moral truth. You know what? That explains so much, right? It really does. If people are out there just reacting based on feelings, isn't that kind of what animals do, right? Animals just react based on instincts instead of going by facts and common sense and logic and, I don't know, just common sense. That explains a lot. So 74% of adults trust feelings over facts to discern moral truth. 2/3 reject absolute moral truth. And 9 out of 10 embrace syncretism, a blending of competing worldviews. Okay, it's syncretism, syncretism. I'm not even going to try and act like I've ever heard that word before. But apparently it means a blending of competing worldviews. 2/3 reject absolute moral truth, and 9 out of 10 embrace a blending. That is something to think about. Even substantial majorities, Arizona Christian continues to say, of some of the largest Christian church groups reject absolute morality, signaling a deep cultural shift away from biblical principles. For example, 69% of Catholics and 61% of those who attend a mainline Protestant church reject the idea of absolute moral truth. Okay, so what's popping to my mind right now are the scriptures that say, do not rely on your heart. Your heart is wicked in all things. Your heart is deceptively wicked. Right? I mean, aren't we pretty much told that in the Bible, that if you're going to live by your heart, then you're going to live deceptively wicked? You're going to tell yourself that what you're doing is good and moral, but meanwhile, it's not. All right, back to Arizona Christian. Beyond that, the study found that half of theologically identified born-again Christians, adults considered spiritually conservative and a cornerstone of evangelical Christianity, admit to rejecting absolute moral truth. How can that be? What is going on? According to Barna, who is the director of research for CRC, the findings raise significant concerns. Well, I'll say significant concerns, about the long-term implications of this shift in belief for the nation's moral and spiritual foundations. Well, there's another no-duh moment, right? If people aren't rooted in any type of absolute moral truth, then that means their individual moral compasses shift at whim, at will, with the breezes of whatever's going on in their community, in society, in this country, from day to day, right? So it's not just a matter of differing opinions, it's a matter of ever-changing morality. How can a society stay free if there is no foundation based on an absolute truth? And in America, the foundation is supposed to be God-given individual liberties and rights. From that springs our government. From that springs our societies. From that flows our individual freedoms. So if you remove moral absolutes, which come from God, from that equation, what do you have? You don't have God-given anymore. You don't have God-given individual liberties and rights any longer. You have government given, government granted. You have one person arguing this is moral, another person arguing that is moral. Suddenly, what used to be considered accepted norms, the moral absolutes, the moral absolute truths, become a matter for debate. Suddenly stealing isn't stealing any longer. And that's why you get certain Democrat-controlled cities in America watering down their theft laws, right? So all of a sudden they don't prosecute thefts only if they're above a certain dollar amount. They only consider theft a theft if it's above $999. And so then you get thieves stealing $998 worth of merchandise because they know they're not going to be prosecuted because it's not considered theft. It's theft, but not really theft. And abortion. There's no moral absolute truth that Democrats and leftists and abortion advocates want to acknowledge in terms of abortion, they switch it up. They do a switcheroo, right? They say it's not about the baby because it's not a baby. It's a grouping of cells. So a grouping of cells cannot be killed or murdered, but rather it's the idea of preserving and protecting the woman's health and the woman's freedoms and the woman's right to choose. So they sort of switch their moral absolutes and their moral absolute truths on that. They switch it so far, they refuse to even acknowledge a baby as a baby. They just call it a group of cells. All right, let's read I'll read, you listen, what Barna says about the significant concerns he has, the no-duh significant concerns, right, for the long-term implications of this shift. He says, accepting all truths as equally valid cannot help but dig a deep foundation of chaos, confusion, and helplessness. Exactly, right? Because you take it out to its extremes and you get Hamas, the radical terrorists, think that they are upholding moral absolutes and moral truths by conducting terrorist raids against Israel, because in their moral absolute truthful minds, eradicating Jews from the face of the map, from earth, is the righteous cause, is the godly cause, is the moral cause. So this is what happens when you don't have moral absolute truths. It starts small. Theft is only theft if it's above a certain amount, and it quickly grows to allow for murder and the eradication of people from planet Earth. So where did all this moral free fall come from, right? Where did all this in America, where did this immoral type of society grow from? Well, my guest today has actually done a lot of work studying this issue, because he's written the book Stumbling Toward Utopia, How the 1960s Turned into a National Nightmare and How We Can Revive the American Dream. His name is Tim Goeglein. He is with Focus on the Family. He is a repeat Bold and Blunt guest, and I love chatting to him. Tim Goeglein, thank you so much for coming back on Bold and Blunt. Great to have you here.
It's wonderful to be with you, Cheryl.
I can't wait to get your viewpoint and discuss your latest book, Stumbling Toward Utopia, because it just seems so timely in light of a couple articles that I read. The New York Times just posted this piece comparing 1960s, the uprising then, to 2025, what we're seeing under Donald Trump's administration. And of course, they blame it all on Donald Trump and politics. But you, in Stumbling Toward Utopia, How the 1960s Turned into a National Nightmare and How We Can Revive the American Dream, you have a different viewpoint.
Well, I do, because what brought us to 1968, Cheryl, and what makes that a genuine inflection point by all of the lights of American history is a moral and social revolution. I might even say a cataclysm of the first order. It was not only the sexual revolution, which was enormous, but it was a comprehensive remaking on the part of progressives of all of our greatest American institutions. It was a remaking of government, a remaking of our legal system. It was a remaking of what we broadly thought of as entertainment, high culture and popular culture both. But the idea is that it was not rooted, contemporaneously in the very things that we are seeing, which power so many of the highlights of contemporary life in America, 2025. It's tempting, to make these broad assertions. But to suggest that somehow we are back in the moral and social revolution of the 1960s and what that meant for America, which frankly was a kind of inverted reality, Cheryl, it's just not the case. And what we are seeing, however, in large measure, is the attempt on the part of progressives to comprehensively suggest that the presidency is not legitimate, that parts of our federal government are suspect or not legitimate. These are very deep waters, and I think that we have to be extremely prudent in this regard.
So you look at the 1960s as being a pivotal point in America, which I think everybody would agree with. But I also look at Barack Obama as being a pivotal point in America as well. And I wonder if you could speak to that.
I'm really glad you raised that because, of course, Barack Obama came directly out of central casting in the moral and social earthquake that we're discussing. And in fact, in Stumbling Toward Utopia, what I say is that if you really want to understand the revolution of the late 1960s, you have to understand what was happening at the turn of the 20th century. Roger Baldwin, the founder of the ACLU, the remaking of the American legal system, was a communist. Woodrow Wilson, the president of the United States eventually, former president of Princeton, governor of New Jersey, felt strongly the Declaration of Independence was outdated, felt that the United States Constitution was outdated. A celebration by Margaret Sanger of the coming sexual revolution. If you look at just some of these comprehensive thinkers, influencers, changers who brought us to the 1960s, what you see in many ways is the emergence of Barack Obama. And in fact, Rules for Radicals, which was one of the most influential book, of the entire social revolution, of course, was profoundly embraced by Barack Obama, internalized, and then used as a tool in his own toolbox for policy, culture, and a number of other, really shattering changes in American life. So I completely agree with you.
You and I would say your organization, Focus on the Family, and many on the right of Christian values have a tendency to just sort of summarize that all that ails America can be found in biblical truths. In other words, if people just turn back to the Bible, if people just turn back to religion, then our problems would disappear. But you have this really interesting piece that you wrote at the Daily Signal earlier in June. Religion without faith will never bring fulfillment. And you're making a case that, yes, religion is good, but false religion could be just as damaging as no religion. Could you talk about that?
The thing that makes the United States of America exceptional is, of course, our Constitution, which really animates ultimately the defense of American conservatism and our worldview. But my friend Breitbart used to say that politics is downstream from culture, and I used to say to him that is categorically the case. But if you really want to understand, American life, I think you have to understand that both culture and politics are downstream from faith, and specifically in the American experience, that is firmly a Judeo-Christian tradition. This is a timeless component of what gives to us uniquely the United States of America. It's the kernel, it's the founding part of American exceptionalism. I love this beautiful line from the primary author of the United States Constitution, James Madison, who said, Cheryl, that conscience is the most sacred of all property. James Madison and the founders were not reasoning from some very broad sense of spirituality. They simply weren't. they were arguing passionately that the other side of freedom, the guarantor of liberty over time, is moral excellence in the people and in the leaders. They knew that you could not carry out the American experience of freedom and liberty without a comprehensive virtue. And in the American experience, that idea of moral excellence does not come from nowhere, and it certainly does not come from a kind of undefinable, intangible sense of spirituality. It comes from a definable Judeo-Christian worldview. And by the way, people can contend with that thesis of American exceptionalism, and they certainly have. But if you are comfortable that there is an objective sense of truth, and if you love history and believe that although it's complex, that it's important that we understand those taproots, it's undeniable that in the history of the United States of America, and of course we're sailing into our 250th birthday, it would be impossible to think about the idea of America apart from the very central foundational pillars of what we're speaking about.
Recognizing that doesn't make it any less stickier when you as a Christian or you as a patriotic American who understand the Judeo-Christian roots of America and how it's tied at the hip to freedom, doesn't make it any easier to fight against, for instance, what Texas was just battling with the creation of the Islam Center and things like that. So how would a properly compassed American go about fighting for Judeo-Christian values while still upholding the First Amendment religious freedoms of other faiths?
I really believe that you have asked the largest historical question, because as we watch most of what we think of as the free world, really dilute their sense of their own patrimony, the United States of America, Cheryl, defies those patterns. And what I mean by that, for instance, is that if you go to Italy or France or Germany, et cetera, and you begin to speak in the public square about the importance of Christianity, not only in the 21st century, but in the building of things like constitution and comprehensive religious liberty, free expression, freedom of assembly, etc., it's considered a form of bad manners to somehow mention the importance, the founding importance in those countries, cultures, and civilizations of Christianity. But in America, despite this very strong moment of contention and debate over these questions, there still remains a very large percentage of the American people who would find it simply impossible to think about the idea of America, for instance, if our religious liberty and conscience rights were not at the very center of it. In fact, I think the overwhelming majority of the American people would say that the permanent things in the United States of America are definitively rooted in the kind of faith questions that we are discussing. In my role at Focus on the Family, I have spent a long tenure purposely contending on these questions with limitless numbers of progressives and people who don't agree. And when I get to the question of the founding of America and the pre-founding of America, it's very difficult for them to make a case that somehow you can come up with the idea of the United States of America and somehow artificially divorce or decouple the idea of Christianity and Judaism from the very roots of American order, because you simply can't do it. At that point, you would have to delve into erasure, wokeistan, and cancel culture. And of course, the progressives have already found that they're running out of steam in that argument.
Yeah, so they just grow louder because they can't make the principled persuasive case. So they just grow louder and more violent.
I could not agree, and I think it's very important, just to that point, if I may,
yes,
to say that it's a recurring failing of people of otherwise goodwill to somehow think that you can forget what you're about, or you can forget about what you're trying to accomplish, and yet still end up with the same country. And I think that the basis of our polarization is rooted in questions precisely like the ones being raised in this great conversation.
So I know our time always goes so fast when we chat, Tim. So one more quick question, though, going back to your book, the second part of your book's title. It is Stumbling Toward Utopia, How the 1960s Turned into a National Nightmare. And here's the part I want to ask you about, and how we can revive the American dream. Before you have to go, just give a couple of points on that.
Well, I love the fact that Germany cannot say the day it was born. France doesn't know when it was born. Italy doesn't know when it was born. Spain doesn't know when it was born. But the United States of America knows when it was born. We were born in the afternoon of July 4th, 1776. And as we go into the 250th year of America's birthday, it should not be, Cheryl, a year of commemoration. It should be a year of celebration. And this is a perfect opportunity to go tell a new generation. One of my favorite writers is George Orwell.
Yes.
And he famously said that the first duty of an intelligent person is to restate the obvious. And I think we have a beautiful opportunity going into our 250th, to go tell a new generation the beautiful story of the United States of America. We don't have to glamorize. We don't have to find a way to spin or to be superficial. We can tell the story of the United States. We can be comfortable with those parts of our history that are less than bright and shining. It's really okay for a great country to say that a great country doesn't mean that it's a perfect country. But the United States of America is overwhelmingly the most remarkable country in the history of mankind. And what I say in Stumbling Toward Utopia is, yes, let's understand what got us into this mess. Of course, that's the first half of the book. But the other part of the book is to say, here is a comprehensive way that we can go forward through renewal, regeneration, and restoration. And I remain an inveterate optimist. I believe firmly and with good reason that our best days are in front of us.
Well said. Tim Goeglein, it's always great chatting with you. Thank you so much for taking the time on Bold and Blunt today.
A real joy. Thank you, Cheryl.
In addition to checking out his book, don't forget to check out the website and check out the latest goings on Focus on the Family. I want to thank you for listening. Remind you that if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.